Father, I do thank you for a really good day this morning, and I thank you that, Lord, even in the midst of frustrations and disappointments and upsetting things, that, Father, you are the center of it all. And, Lord, I'm so convinced that what you say in Psalm 40 is so true, that for those of us who love you, we should continually say, the Lord be magnified. So today, may that be on our lips today. The Lord be magnified. Not our situation, not our frustration, not our problems, not our issues, but you, Lord. I thank you for this brief time that we have together, and I do pray for a sense of clarity. I know we're going to be flying low through a lot of information, but I also know, Father, that some of it's review and that some is just going to have to be worked out. So, Lord, I pray again for clarity. Give us the ability to understand, but also give us the ability to apply what we're learning. Thank you so much. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, this is being recorded, and we don't have anyone here with us live this morning except for you guys, but we will be having these recorded. If you would ever like a copy of the recordings, don't hesitate to ask. It's a simple URL, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. What I'm going to do briefly is show you Lesson 4 information. And is this not visible on the site yet? Okay, we're actually not going to be going through it slide by slide. This is a review of RED 3005. Bless you. So I don't want to spend a lot of class time on it. What I'd like to do, though, is just briefly remind you of some of the issues dealing with emergent literacy. And don't forget that emergent literacy can happen at any time in the elementary years. So even though you're dealing with fourth grade, is that right? Fourth grade students for this class, you may be dealing with some emergent literate students. Okay, so it is this whole notion. Marie Clay was really the first one to talk about emergent literacy as a particular part of learning and learning how to read. But it's this whole notion that literacy emerges, and I love the idea of a flower. You know, we don't usually just see the stem and the flower. It emerges, and usually we see the rose, the bud, you know, and then it slowly opens. Well, that's exactly what literacy does for students. It's not a natural thing to have students be literate. In fact, we know a lot of cultures and civilizations don't even have language. That's why we have, Wycliffe translators and things like that. So emergent literacy really developed in the 80s. We started talking about it a lot, but now it's just kind of in our culture. We talk about emergent literacy. So basically it's from 0 to 4 or 5 years. Question? This is going to be available, thank you, on our course website. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm going to fly low. I wouldn't even try to take notes if I were you, unless you just want to, but I'm going to fly low because I want to get to the part about what you're going to be doing, the other 9 assessments. That's really what we're going to focus on today. So basically from 0 to about 4 to 5 years, we call that emergent literacy. We say that its timing is based on nurture, not necessarily on nature. So it doesn't mean that every 4 or 5-year-old is going to be in the emergent literacy stage, basically. And we prepare them for kindergarten, and we try to prevent academic failure, future failure. I'm not going to read through all these, but again, these are indications of development. So when you see children doing these kind of things, like listening to stories, acting out stories, we know that they're right there in that way. Unfortunately, we do live in a very broken world, and we've got risk factors we have to deal with. You're seeing them in schools, I'm sure, and you're seeing the factors like poverty and the factors like not having experiences like some children have. It just, it breaks my heart. Only 24% of 4th graders are proficient readers. So I wanted to bring that out in particular because you're dealing with 4th graders for this assessment. Only 24% are considered proficient readers. And so it's very likely that you're dealing with a child that's less than proficient for 4th grade. That's okay, because, well, it's not okay, but I mean, that's what we would expect. Unfortunately, ethnicity plays a huge part. So by ethnicity, we can see that 41% of white children, and this is from one study, it's actually the National Association of Educational Progress, the NAEP study of 2004 told us this. It's a nationwide study that all 50 states are involved in, and they compare standardized state scores, test scores. 41% of white children, this is again by 4th grade, are considered proficient, which to me is very low. 15% of Hispanic children are considered proficient at fourth grade, and 13% of African American children are considered proficient by fourth grade. That's just shocking statistics. Now, this is NAEP. Again, NAEP studies they're very well respected and well trusted. 2004, I don't think it's changed a whole lot. It would be interesting to see, though, what are the new statistics on this. So the key is a poor reader in first grade will probably remain a poor reader in fourth grade, 88% probability. So if they are struggling in first, then we need to spend some time helping them in first grade, right, and hopefully lay that off. So reading is the key. It is absolutely the key. Children who lag behind have less exposure, they miss opportunities, they encounter material that's too difficult for their skill level, so they're not on their instructional level at all. Sometimes they develop negative reading about school and negative attitudes about school and reading, and they are less likely to graduate from high school, and you know that is affecting the rest of their lives, right? If their high school graduation doesn't happen, the kind of jobs they'll be qualified for are very, very, very limited. So reading is the key. I'm so sorry. Got two people texting me, and let me turn this down. Okay. So reading is the key, and we call them at-risk children who are at risk for later problems. So you may have heard that term. I hope you have. Now let's go a little positive. So if children are exposed to a lot of print, they are more likely to solidify their reading and writing skills. We know that foundation for content areas where they learn to read is early on, but when they read to learn, like in fourth grade, they're starting to read to learn. Critical that they know how to read, and they know how to read well by fourth grade. It's critical. You're still learning, by the way, and I like this last bullet because I'm learning all the time. I learn new words, I learn new thoughts, new phrases. It's amazing, but it comes from the language that you know. Vygotsky was a big one to say, we use language to learn language. You know, we use the tools we have to learn something new. So that's not a new idea, it's just a really important idea. All right. So conventional literacy, we say there are receptive and expressive components. Receptive means they're receiving it in. Receive is the root word. Expressive means they're expressing it out. So reading is considered receptive. Writing is considered expressive, and that's what we're talking about in terms of literacy. Can they decode accurately? Can they decode and have fluency? Can they understand what they're decoding? Okay, and then when they're encoding or when they're writing, it also has to do with spelling. So there's a lot going on when we say literacy. Reading and writing is just the big terms of it. You know, we're talking accuracy, fluency, comprehension, writing, spelling, all those things together. Composition skills. If we want our students to be successful, they need these two skills for sure. Accurate and fluent identification, and then good comprehension. You can decode what you cannot comprehend, but you cannot comprehend what you can't decode. So you can decode it. You can work it out. My story here is that when I was in, when my husband was in seminary, we worked with a ministry that brought in men from the ships. We were in New Orleans, and it was a fascinating place. But they would bring these men who were oftentimes from other countries, spoken many other languages, but we'd bring them to this called a center, a seamen's center. And we took the seamen there, and they were able to call home. And so Steve's job was to help them make international phone calls, and it was free for them, and it was a really neat ministry. They could play pool and ping pong and stuff like that. Well, every time we went, we read scripture. We had devotions with them. But I don't know Spanish, but I know how to read it. And so I would get my Spanish Bible translation out, and I would read, and then they would kind of talk about it, and I would try to facilitate. But I could read Spanish all day long. Didn't understand it like I needed to be able to communicate with it. So that's the example. You can decode what you can't comprehend. I can read almost any word in Spanish because it's similar pronunciation, but I can't comprehend the words I can't even decode. Okay. Children, so take this back to the classroom now. They can possibly decode it and call out words, but they may not be understanding what you're saying. So that's why in your informal reading inventory you did with the Jennings, you're asking them to not only decode, you're also asking them to comprehend. Are they understanding it? And that's why we have that part in there. Do we teach reading in preschool? No, but we teach what they call pre-reading, or things like phonics, phonemic awareness, actually. We're not teaching them reading, and we're not actually teaching them phonics, as in this is the sound, because remember, phonics is sound written down. Phonemic awareness is hearing, it's in the air. Okay. We don't teach them conventional literacy, we teach them emergent literacy. We have them play with language, we have them do all kinds of stories and acting out and things like that. This is kind of the same ideas that we've been talking about. So we have several skills that we want them to work on in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, if need be. Oral language is one. Concepts about print, meaning do they know that the words start on the left and go to the right? If you hand them a book, hand it to them upside down and backwards. Always do that, because then you can check very quickly. If they flip it over and turn it over, then you know, okay, concepts about print. That's one of the concepts. We start at the front and we open a book from this way. And so I just always like to do that. I hand it to them upside down, face down, hand it to them and see what they do. If they just open it right there, okay, you got to work on that skill. That's one thing. We also deal with environmental print. I don't know many kids that don't understand that the golden arches means McDonald's, right? They get some of those things pretty quickly. Chick-fil-A, the little chicken sign, they get environmental print, things that are in the environment. That's something really easy, which is another reason why it's a good idea to do those things like cereal boxes, and you just cut out the front flap of each cereal box, and then you have them read through it like a story, and you just talk about it. What do you see on this box? Oh, there's a letter C on the Cheerios box, You could talk about the colors, you could talk about whatever, and then make up a story that goes along with it. So environmental print, alphabetic knowledge, we do this, right? We sing songs about the ABCs and so on. And again, we're talking more about phonological processing, so the sounds of language and how they're being processed. Visual perception, can they differentiate the beginning of the letter from the end of the letter? Believe it or not, even at the letter stage, some kids don't understand that word teacher on the wall has distinct, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different letters. So we have to teach them, there's a beginning and an ending part of the letter. They have to be visually perceptive and able to do that. And I love pretend reading. I love emergent reading. I think that's the most fun, because they want to show you, they want you to be proud, right? I can read this book. My kids were always they were into a lot of books, obviously, but there's one book in particular, The Napping House. I don't know if you've read The Napping House. It's it adds on, each page kind of adds on to the next, and it's such a fun story. And they would read, both of them just loved to read that book, quote unquote, read it when they were little. A lot of fun. And then pretend writing. I just was looking at my Bible. I've got little notes that the kids would write me while we were sitting in church, and they would see me taking notes, and Chris in particular was so cute about this, but he wrote one day, and I still have it in my Bible, this whole little section, and it's all zeros, but boy, he wrote, man, it was hilarious, and so it was just so precious. And then there was another piece I have where he had copied something that I had written. And you could tell that it wasn't something he would have written. It was something like, the measure of a man's worth, or whatever. And it had this little tiny handwriting, but he was copying, and he was doing it, emergent writing. So again, I want you to read through this. I'll be putting this slide up, these slides. But this is really a basic review of RED 3005. So don't want to spend a whole lot more time. Oral language, phonological processing, and print knowledge are the biggies in this area of emergent literacy. Okay, and I am flying low here. Oral language.
We're learning about.
Oh, good. Okay, so you're in that class right now?
Yeah, we're in oral language.
Fantastic. Well, this will be a nice review. Phonological processing. Okay. Okay, and again, the alphabetic principle that there's a letter-sound correspondence. When we write it down, we call it phonics. When we talk about it out loud, we call it phonology or phonological processing. Memory, access, and awareness are the three keys for this. Hopefully this is, again, a review what you're learning. Can we remember what we read, or can we remember what we've seen? Then can we access that memory? And then can we make sense of it? Okay. We've got phonemes. We call reading breaking the code. And so phonological sensitivity helps us break the code by understanding that different letters make different sounds and so on, groups of letters. All right, phonemes don't really exist because Miss Johnson probably wouldn't agree with that, but the point is they really do exist. But the point is that they are usually smushed together with other sounds. So it doesn't make sense in natural speech to just speak in phonemes. If you do that, people would look at you weirdly, right? Because even the words even our most basic words have multiple phonemes, like the word boy. All of those sounds, the b, the oi, oi, even itself. So there's several phonemes altogether. We don't speak in phonemes, but they exist when we co-articulate them. So the word exists, boy, but we don't speak in it. Okay. Together, smush it together. Yeah. Articulate is to say, and then co is together. So co-articulate. So when we speak in phonemes, but again, I said this earlier, but I'll remind you again, the first job of a child is to break up that sound speech stream into different words. Okay, because babies, you can think about babies, they hear words all the time, but they don't understand because they haven't broken it into meaningful parts yet. That's why when we talk to babies, we usually say very simple one-syllable words, like bottle sometimes becomes ba. Right? They can understand ba, and they can hear the word ba in any setting, and boy, do they make use of it. You know, they can use that one-syllable word to say, I want, ba, ba, ba. Or they could say ba if they're done and push it away, ba. Or they might say just babble, just ba, ba, play around with it. So we can use, I love babies babble. Do you know babies babble in the language that they'll eventually speak? Isn't that cool? Because that's the language they hear. Yeah. So phonological sensitivity has to do with making sure they understand the differences between the sounds. Okay. We get smaller and smaller increments of speech. So children come to you with knowledge of sentences. We have to stop them and say, okay, now in that sentence there are words, and then we have to say, okay, and in those words there are syllables, there are sounds. So we get smaller and smaller. Assuming you're familiar with onset and rhyme, onset being the first sound, it's usually a consonant, and then rhyme is the ending sound. Usually begins with a vowel, not always, but usually. Phonemes, again, those are the discrete sounds, like the word cat has three distinct phonemes. K, a, t. Notice I didn't say k, a, t. My big pet peeve you're hearing now, but it's not k, it's k. It's just the sound, not the sound after it. Okay. Fast, fast. Okay. Notice the slash lines, that's an indication of the sound, not of the letter. Okay, so that's the sound we're talking about. And so on. So we have print knowledge as well, and children are learning and learning. Again, I'm flying low here, but all right. So here's the way that they're connected. We have this, when student, and I'm thinking of the earliest child, their oral language develops first, usually. Then they begin to see the sensitivity between language, between words. Then they begin to actually decode it and read and then write it down, encoding, decoding. And then finally, all that process culminates, we hope, in comprehension. So they are related, but they're not directly related. But oral language has to do with reading comprehension. The more the students can say and participate orally with you, the better their reading comprehension is going to be, which is why we spend time in schools having children do things orally, like reading out loud and maybe acting out loud or saying things out loud, because there's a direct connection between the two. This whole piece is talking about the fact that we can't separate literacy. I don't think this is Dr. Wegmanism, but separating literacy into discrete parts like reading, writing, oral, it doesn't do students much good. What does students good is them to understand it in the environment. And so teaching one area won't necessarily help teaching another. Now, here's my big stand on phonics, or I shouldn't say my, this is our profession's stand on phonics. Teaching just the sounds of words is not necessarily going to help them with the comprehension of the words, but it's important. Okay, so don't teach them in isolation, try to teach them in context. That's that whole business. All right, focused instruction in all three areas. That's why you have the 90-minute reading block. That's why even in fourth grade, I bet you're still seeing them work on, oral, encoding and decoding. So I always get the question, what do you do with emergent literacy students then? Well, you encourage them to listen, to speak, to read, to write. You talk about the construction of meaning, or you have them construct meaning. You try to expand their vocabulary at all points. Don't let really cool words go by. If you see a student look at you with a quizzical look on their face, jump on it. You got that? Or what does that mean? Or whatever. Are you understanding me? Thumbs up if that makes sense. All those kind of member checking, so that if they don't know the word, talk about it, explore it, have fun with it. Oh, that's a word, it rhymes with whatever, or who can think of another definition of that word, or whatever. For me, it's all about the vocabulary, the language. And then, of course, good books, good literature. Have them write stories, have them just do everything you can think of with language, and that's going to help. Okay. When we are thinking about what to actually teach, sometimes you don't have a lot of choice. And I'm sure you've seen Miss Delgado and other teachers have to deal with the textbook, or they have to deal with the LAFs or the MAFs, the standards that our state sets. However, within those standards, there's a lot of room for choice for what you can do and what you want to do. So see if you can do these kind of things. Let's take just a second to talk about invented spelling. I like to call it temporary spelling. You may or may not have gotten to there in your class yet in 3005, but I like to call it temporary spelling because it lets parents know that that's not where we expect them to end up. I always like to have students express themselves, then we talk about it, and then on one-on-one conferences I would have students and I would circle certain words that they'd misspelled, or I would point them out and say, for everyone else in the class to understand it, let's spell it the conventional way. And I use that word, conventional. So they knew I wasn't just saying a big red X on that wrong spelled word, I was encouraging them to express themselves, do what they wanted, and then, oh yeah, I want someone else to be able to read it. So usually they were pretty open to, let's change it and let's make it conventional spelling. Okay, so again, we call it temporary spelling, and if the parent asks you about it, you say, that's just exactly what it is. We consider that temporary, we're not going to accept that on a test, but we're going to accept it in the classroom. Okay, so invented or temporary spelling, I think, is important. Based, wow, love learning centers. There's so much more we could say about these things, but again, I think you're going to be getting this content, and I don't want to spend class time. Love, love, love rug time. Even I did it all the way up to fourth grade, where you pull children, you have them sit in front of you on the rug. Maybe you sit on a little stool, maybe you sit on the floor if you've got on pants or whatever. And you read to them and you talk to them and you have them communicate with each other and them communicate with you. It's more of this family feel. Gosh, I'd have such good memories of growing up and, even things like around a campfire or even in camps and things like that it just was meaningful, and if we can create some of that time in our schools, I think our children are really going to appreciate that and be motivated to want to do well. Excuse me. many of you are in art this semester? Has anybody taken the art class on, I think it's Monday nights? Okay. Oh, are you? Good. Beautiful work, by the way, out. Yeah, those came out really cool. The collages and the thing. So don't forget, yeah, it's integrated art and music. You probably brought in that credit, or maybe humanities. It's a humanities. Yeah, so if you took humanities, you wouldn't need that class. And I hate that. I really hate that you're missing it because it's a really cool class. Yeah, it's in your program, but you can bring in humanity hours. But love the whole decoration. Obviously, one of the first things we did when I got here was we got to decorate these boards, right, ladies? Those of you that help me, we have to get things going. Yeah, we'll redo them, but I love those boards too. Yeah, but it helps. It just sets the tone for this is what's important in our lives, and this is what we feel like is important. And for our students, it can help them again be much more motivated to learn and much more motivated to do what they need to do. A long PowerPoint. I do not expect you to memorize all this. Yeah, it's huge. This is a really good review of that entire class of 3005 and also from your textbook. Big books, which by the way, we have a huge selection of big books next door. Please use them when you need to. There's so many over there. I do too. Rereading, wordless picture books. One of the reasons I like big books so much is that the children can't deal with them on their own, and they need a parent or us, teachers, to help them deal with the books. Another reason I love big picture books, because it's usually the little child, and they have to crawl in your lap to be able to use it. Oh, what a shame. So I love that. What a shame. All right, so interactive writing, very much fun. Poetry. I have to tell you, my mom taught children's literature for years and years and years. But anyway, she always said, keep a poem in your pocket. Keep a poem in your pocket. And I can just see her doing that. But having that poem ready and handy, and literally I would walk around some days. I didn't do it all the time. But with the poem in my pocket, and I knew, okay, sometime between now and the bell this afternoon, I want to pull out this poem. Maybe it's when you're getting them to line up for lunch, or maybe they're waiting and God forbid, music is late or something, and you're standing there, you're trying to entertain a little bit. Pull out your poem. Okay, keep a poem in your pocket. Okay, reading aloud, my favorite thing to do with children, reading aloud. It helps them know language. There's so many benefits to it. So many studies have been done to show reading aloud is critical and very helpful. Whew, finally got to the end of that. Okay. All right, so this will be posted. What did you say? Yeah, 58 slides. Yeah, 58. Again, it's just a big old hairy review. Maybe not hairy, but okay. All right, so what I really would like to get to also, let me show you, you are working toward the case study at the end of this term. You'll be, or not even at the very end, but coming up pretty soon, you're going to be turning in a case study. And this case study is as close as we can get to what you'll be doing in your internship semester. Yeah. In your internship semester, you'll be doing 2 case studies. So the way it's working out is Ms. Johnson's having you do the case study first, one of your first things you'll do with a student. Then do your teacher work sample, which is your big, like your unit. And then do a case study after your teacher work sample. So you've got 2 case studies for internship. And this was turned in just last spring, and so it's the most current one. And this was a really good example. So we're going to go through a couple things. You have some particular pieces you just have to do, and so it's description and things like that. You also have lesson plans you have to do. However, I want to jump down to some of the actual stuff. Okay, so here is an example.
Are you going to put this up as an example?
Yes, I will. I got permission. This is Tiffany's from last semester. Okay. Take out this page. You should see something that looks like this. I handed it out, and I think I've sent it out through email. It's also under handouts. It's called Assessment Chart for Case Study. Assessment Chart for Case Study. Now, you also have a similar looking one that is just for the IRI, but that's not the one I'm talking about here. This one is Assessment Chart for Case Study. I I handed it out. I may, if I didn't, then forgive me, and we'll get you copies. Okay. Okay. All right, stop looking then. Stop looking.
She has it from.
That's. No, that's not the IRI one. That's it. Yeah, that's it. It was with those directions. Yes, the directions I gave you for the Jennings, I gave you two at the same time. So one of them was the directions for the Jennings. I think it's the very first day of class. There were two together, yeah. This is the one we have not looked at yet. Regardless, it's also on the website. Yeah, directions for Jennings, yeah. Please note, this is the entire case study, not just Jennings, though. This is the entire piece right here. Okay. Now, this is an actual example of Tiffany's work, but it's the one she scribbled on and made notes on and things like that, which is fine. It's perfectly fine. What I'd like to do is just point out, you've already seen the second one where it says comprehension. Jennings IRI is covering that whole line, that second line there. Now, that's really important. So what I'm showing you this to say, this is your page to write on, but I want to see what you wrote because you're going to be putting in probably a little bit of information there. Okay, so let's take a peek. I'm going to try to enlarge this. Hold on. It's like magic, like butter. Okay. So we have not looked at the rest of the other 9. So let's do that now. If you have your guidebook, take that out. It's on page 415. And I want to make sure we have the time. Okay, good. If you do not have it, you'll have to wait until you get it. Oh, we did get both books are in the curriculum lab. Thank you, Lord. They're both in there. You're welcome to take them, make copies if you need to. And you will be making copies for some of these. Okay. So let me get to the page and we'll just talk about it briefly. Sorry. The title is the same. It's probably going to be in the appendix, so look in the back if you're in a different... It is. It's one of the appendices. It's in this book. Yeah. It's called Sample Interest Inventory. It actually looks like goodies. Nope, it doesn't look like that. There we go. Inventory. Looks just like this. Sample Interest Inventory. So either you or your student can write down these answers. I kind of like for it to be give and take interaction. So ask them the questions and then you write down the answers. So who's your favorite TV show? No. What's your favorite TV show? Who is your favorite TV character? And so on. And you just ask them the questions, you write it down. Why would you do a sample interest inventory? So you get to know the child. You know about them. Yeah. And you can find books that have to do with some of these topics in them. Okay? Does that make sense? Yes. Make a copy of this page and then write your answers on it and then scan it in.
This will be before all the assessments?
It's part of the assessment. So look, you see on this list, this is your table of contents for all of your assessments. So it should be the first thing in that section. Okay, motivation. Okay? Do you see how they connect? Okay, good. So back to your chart. Motivation is first. Interest surveys, attitude surveys, sorry. It's in the guide text, is page 415. Okay? The second one you've already done. Woohoo! Or you will have already done by that point. Yeah, the Jennings IRI. I know some of you are still waiting to get in. Okay, the third one is pretty close. It's the oral language assessment. So you just turn the page to 417, and it looks like this. Okay. And let's see. Yeah, that's Finimiki's next. So the oral language assessment, what you're doing is simply when you have asked the child to read, again, you're working with fourth graders, so they should have some kind of, knowledge or whatever. But I want you to mark how they do on these indicators. Now, again, this is, you copy it, mark on it, scan in your results. Now, you can see that on this one, they only did it one time. I'd like for you to do it 3 or 4 times, but I understand the interest of time. You may not have time to do that. But it's a great way to kind of keep a handle on their oral reading skills. So you simply ask yourself, does the child speak incomplete sentences? I'm so sorry. oral language. This is not reading yet. This is just language when you're talking to them. You know, do they speak in complete sentences? Why would this information be important orally to know? Yeah. Why is that important to know if they speak with complete sentences or not? Or, well, okay. There is, thank you. There's a connection between their oral language fluency and their reading fluency. And that's why it's important to know this kind of information. So if I see that your results on this for your child are all ones, then we know there's more going on than just reading problems. There's an oral language problem. Okay? We might understand that it's a second language learner, for example. We also might understand that it's just a very quiet, shy child. So you got to watch. You can't just say it's only one thing or another. You have to take a whole picture of the child. I'm sorry? Which one? Yeah, some of these are a little bit hard, but you can tell. I mean, there are kids who will. Let's just let that go, because there are kids who will come up with words and you'll think, where'd that come from? So you may not know that for them that's a new word, but you may be surprised by a word they use. Maybe that's a better way to look at it than the word new. It's a good question, though. How would you know? Okay. Yes, you do it when you're talking to them. In fact, you could do this one right along with your first one, which is when you're talking to them about their likes and dislikes. So, yeah, see how easy and quick. I mean, this is very, very quick. If you can do it 3 times, 1 is the assignment. Yeah, do it like every couple weeks. But 1 is the assignment. And you notice here's just 1 date. You could do that later. That's right. Yeah. This is the 3rd one down. Yes, oral language assessment. And again, it's in GYPE. All right, I'm going to skip down now to spelling, which is also in GYPE. And it is page 418 and 19. Notice what we're doing here. I'm using the same book so that when you get into your internship, you'll say, I have that book. I know. Okay, so for this, you need the book. Yeah, you should probably just get the book. Yeah, but it is available in the curriculum lab if you need it, which is another reason, another good thing. Okay, so let's look at spelling. What do we do with the spelling? On page 418 are the directions. You don't have that on your screen, though. Page 418 looks like this on this side. I'm sorry, that's not what I'm showing up here, so I skipped. Hold on, let me find it. Phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness. I skipped down, sorry. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. This is the results. These are the results that you're going to be getting. So it's actually what you're seeing here is page 419, and they actually answer the questions at the bottom there. Let's see, am I getting in the right place? Okay, so what you're to do with the spelling, it's just like you would take a normal spelling test. You're just going to give them a test, okay? And you're going to say number your paper 1 through 10 or whatever, 16, I think. It gives you 2 different sets of lists on page 418. One of them is for K3, K2, and then you're going to be using the ones at the bottom, grades 3 and up. Okay, and you'll see the words are like, the first one is the word setter. The sentence is, her dog is an Irish setter. They're not on there yet. This is for the first list. You're going to use the other list. Yeah, you're going to use grades 3 through 6. You'll see it if you're looking at Appendix Q in the book. It's called Assessing Student Spelling Development. It's the page before, yeah. Hello. All right. So you first tell the students, though, that they don't expect to, and I'm just reading this, but explain to them you don't expect them to know all the words. You just want to see how much they know or whatever. And you're going to ask them to make a good guess. If they don't know how to spell the words, make a guess. And then you just do it just like a normal spelling test. You say the word, you read the sentence, you say the word again, and you, again, have them attempt it. If they don't know it, have them at least try to make the first sounds of the words. You could just encourage them a little bit. Don't belabor this, though. Just spend a little bit of time on it, but don't, the whole 2 hours. If you've gone over 15 minutes on this one, you've gone way too far. Okay. What you're going to get from it is the rest of this here. It says the words are scored according to the stage of spelling that they reflect. So we've got 5 stages at the bottom. This is also explained in that emergent literacy chapter we just went through. But you've got some information if they're pre-communicative, meaning they don't have any notion of spelling at all. I would be very surprised. So you're not going to probably find kids on level 1 or even level 2 semi-phonetic. I bet you're going to find them on phonetic spelling, which means they can get the sound. They may not get the exact spelling of it, but they can get the sound close. The next stage is transitional, which means they're close, but they're not perfect. And then finally, it's correct. Okay, so you're going to find stages 3, 4, and 5. So what you do here is, what has example here, you write down, or no, this is their writing. They've written down these words. You're going to grade them level 3, 4, or 5. Okay, so LAT, the word was supposed to be late, LATE. Okay, but because they got the initial consonant right, the middle vowel is slightly off, but then the final consonant correct, they're scored at a level 3. Now this is not, don't split hairs here. If you guess at a 3 or a 4, it's not that big of a deal. But it's not certainly a 5, which is correct. Okay, so you see, this person scored 3s, 4s mainly, didn't score any 5s, so none of the words are exactly correct, but there's 3s and 4s, so it's not like they're wrong, but they're not totally off, pre-communicative. They've got some spelling notion going on. Yeah, exactly, which is, that's probably the whole key for this class. You're just guessing. Yes, so you give the test, ask them to write it, and then you take it up, and you're done for that day with that child. Later, you go back, like you're doing your oral thing, but later you go back and you labeled it 3, 4, and 5.
Is there a definition of what each word means?
Yes, it's in your chapter.
You just said that.
I did. That's okay. It's okay. It's in your chapter 7. Yeah. Okay? I'm not making up this stuff, by the way, if you don't have a book in front of you. You're like, how do I know this? It's all right here in the book. Yes, the definition of those levels. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah. The definition of those 5 levels. Yeah. Yeah, they're kind of intuitive, but okay. Yes, this is another one you're going to scan in, and notice that in the directions here continue. You're going to find out where they reside on an average. I call it the mode. It'd really be the mean, I guess. But where do they have the most? So it is the mode. This one is going to be 3s, right? So you can pretty well guess that they're at that late level 3 spelling development. It's phonetic. Okay. All right, let's go to another one. Page 419, the next part, which is really what I think this page is developing. Yeah. Miss Lori can help you. Also, Miss Bug in the computer lab, or I'm there if I'm there. Okay, you're also going to be doing developmental writing. Okay. What happens here? You're going to give them a sample to write. Are the directions there? Nope. So you ask them to write something for you. In fact, it's a good practice to have them to write something for you every time. Try to get them to write about a paragraph to do this assessment on. And then you simply ask yourself the questions. Again, this is to be done after. This is not with them. But you ask, did they develop and use a plan for writing? Because sometimes they'll jump right on it. Other times you just think it's off the cuff. Okay, so yes or no. Did they refer to it? Did they reread and so on? And just answer your questions here.
Why are there little lines by the circle?
She had questions over those, and she didn't really know. I don't think, in fact, 2, 3, and 4, you have to be there with them when they're writing the entire thing. I think she actually got a sample of something that had been written earlier, which is another way to do it. So you don't know if they referred to the plan or... Yeah, because Miss Delgado, I know, has them right.
Yeah,
so
like a paragraph
or a story, or try to get something bounded. Sample, yeah.
Would you like us to do that, to get a sample?
I'm going to leave it up to you. Yeah, I think I would. I think I'd prefer. You're going to get more information with her teaching the writing and then having them do it. So just put a blank there or a line there. Now, I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe there weren't any question marks that needed to be used, so NA would be more appropriate here. Or quotations or commas, yeah. So you could just put an NA at that point, or a line. Okay, now look here. Notice again, we've got some levels of spelling, and these are a different set of 5 levels. We're good at this in education. We have different terms for the same things. However, these are all explained in our chapter 7 also. But circle the stage that most applies. She did not do this, and so this is something you need to do, but circle the stage that most applies having to do with that writing sample. And then give some examples why you circled that.
What did you say about this?
These are different stages. They relate to the other 5 that we just talked about in the previous assessment, but they're not exactly the same, and their definitions are in the chapter also. I said that we're really good at that, chapter 7. Yeah, we're unfortunately really good at that in education. Okay, let's go back now and catch up. Cockrum and Schenker book, Phonological Awareness, is on page 12. Turn right to it. How do you like them apples? Okay. This one is tough because the first word of this direction says, generally, the phonemic awareness test, should only be given to students who are non-readers or who can only read a few words. You're going to have probably going to have students who can read more than a few words. Okay. So it probably is a good idea. Well, take it with your student. If they are, there's part of it. If they are a non-reader or can only read a few words, which was the case with the student, then go ahead and use it. If they are a fluent reader, let me say this out loud. Are you hearing me? If they are a fluent reader, maybe she gave you an above average student, do not give this test. So make a note. Did not give the test because the reader was fluent. Okay, this is the only one you can do that one. Phonological awareness test.
If they're fluent, you said.
If they're a fluent,
We can write that on.
yes, write that on there. Do whatever you'd like. But write that on there. If they are a fluent reader, do not give this test. Okay. So as we begin, and you can see on the board up here, what you're simply going to do is just follow the directions here. So it says say, that's what you're going to say. And it says practice item number 1, say. So you say words that rhyme sound the same at the end. Here are some words that rhyme, some are not real words. Listen, fit, dit, rit, sit, kit. Okay. Now I will say 2 words and you say the one that rhymes. It doesn't have to be a real word, it can be a silly one. Listen, rake, take, and then they say it. Okay, so this is I do. This is we do, and then here is you do. So now you're going to say, let's try it again. I'll say 2 words, and you say one that rhymes. Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so there's 2 examples of just examples. And then the third one, finally. All right, now let's do some more. And you give these words, and it's you writing them down, whatever they say. So you're going to say C, B. The child said he.
Okay, so they do.
Yes. They do the additional word here on this one. You're going to know. When you give the Jennings IRI, if they score at, 3rd or 4th grade instructional level, you probably won't need to give this test. Okay. So, yeah. If you're just curious and you want to start it out, then go ahead. You can have them do it. It is an easy test if they know it. They're going to go through it very quickly. Okay, so there are several pages. You notice this is subtest 2. Here's subtest 3. And they all deal with phonic elements. Subtest 4, substitution. And I think, yeah, that's the last one. Okay. The next one is the phonics assessment, and this is found on page 117 in Cochran. Let me find it. The thing that gets tricky are the directions for each, because they're slightly different for each one. So what I recommend is give them half in one session and half in another, just for your own sanity. Figure out time. Figure out things to do the rest of the time. Maybe read to them or whatever. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Mark. It's done. Yes. Have at it. Enjoy. Be fruitful and multiply. So I'm going to go through the rest of these. And if you can stay, you're welcome to. I'm just going to talk through them. This is being recorded, and so I will post the recording as well as our PowerPoint for today. So I apologize about the timing. Good. All right. Which one does what?
The phonics assessment test, which one is this?
It says phonics and then phonics assessment, Cockrum-Schenker, page 117. That's okay. Again, try to do maybe half of the others after Jennings. Do Jennings and then half of these and then half at another setting. Okay, you have to go too?
No.
Okay, you're looking at me kind of funny.
Test.
No, half of the rest of, half of the rest of these. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So again, what you're looking at is.
So like do motivational, oral, and phonological awareness.
There you go. You could do motivational, oral, phonological awareness if you need to. Phonics and spelling, maybe. All of those in one setting. Yeah. And then the rest of them in another setting. Okay. So each of another thing that I like about this is these tests have some pretty specific things that you look at. On page 127 actually starts the actual test part. All that prior from 117 to 127, those are all directions for you to read through. So you can kind of get familiar with it before you have to go, before you have to give them the test. It still gives you the directions here. Okay, so it says place subtest 1 in front of the student. Read the story out loud until I say stop. Do not assist the student by pronouncing unknown words. Okay, write the mispronunciations on the story below and note the weak skill areas. She started out by doing checks, and as I remember, it was very quick because the child was reading very well. So they just stopped doing the checks because it just got really fast. But notice she had a little bit of trouble with the word, she or he, with the word cub. So she wrote what they said, club, and then they self-corrected. So use those same kind of tools we were talking about before. Okay, that was subtest 1. Okay, subtest 2 looks like this. Where is it? Subtest 2. I'm so sorry. Hold on just a second. Okay. I want to make sure. Initial consonants, blending. Okay, here are the actual student pieces. So you're going to need to make copies. You're going to need to make copies of this because the student test only has the student what they need on it. So subtest 2 for the student, if I can turn the page, looks like this at the top on page 124 on GYPE. So what I would do is copy the whole thing and then get a piece of paper to mask the rest of it. So you mask off 3, 4 at the bottom here. You just have them focus on subtest 2, and you're going to write your answers on this one, which is on page 129. So you're going to need copies of this whole piece in here. But on page 129, it has all the subtests together, but that's just for you to make your copies on. And that's what I want to see turned in. I don't need to see the students' tests on this point because they're not writing anything. All they're doing is saying things out loud. Okay, so subtest 2 is here. Look at number 1 and point to the letter here at the beginning of the word dog. Or at the beginning of water is the first word. Okay, and if they point to the W, then you know. You continue on for each word. And you're not doing pre-test, post-test here. You're just doing post-test at this point. Then you do subtest 3, subtest 4, subtest 5. And they're very similar. They're pointing out particular words. And again, this is what their subtest is going to look like. It's just going to have letters on it. So it should be pretty easy.
But you don't have to see that part.
You don't have to. I don't need to see this part. I just want to see your answers. Yeah, just the scoring. And then it goes on to 6, 7, and 8, 9, vowel pronunciation, and so on. Okay, so this is kind of a long one, but it's a really helpful one, fruitful one. All right, we talked about spelling. Let's go to fluency now. I'm back on the assessment chart, page 330. This is going to be an appendix again, I guess. No, okay. A lot of jumping around today. All right, so for reading rate, you're simply going to find a passage that's written on their grade level. And what I would find is one that's written at their instructional level that you found in Jennings. You find at least 300 words, but you're going to mark out 100-word segments. So in your mind, you need to figure it out. So I think what they did last semester, if I'm not mistaken, they took something from the reading book. So they knew it was on that particular grade level, and then they marked out the words in their mind or on their page or whatever where 100-word segments were. So there's 300 words altogether marked into 3 segments in their mind. They gave the student that piece or that book page and then had them read it, and they timed it.
It's not like a word list.
It's just a,
but you know it's 100 words.
there you go. That's right. You time it for 1 minute, and you see how far they get in that 1 minute. And then it's saying here, count the number of words total. I'm trying to think, I don't think she gave an example of this one. Spelling. Oh, here's reading rate. Okay. If I had just looked. So this is 133. She got up to 133 words. No, I'm sorry. This slash right there is where she ended. The student ended. Okay, this is the 300-word passage. At 1 minute, they ended there, but you let them go on if it's if it's close to the end of the story, just let them finish it or whatever, and then you count up to 133 words. Okay, and the information here that you're going to get is not going to be. There are some metrics that you can use. They should be reading this amount of words every 100 words. Should be this amount of seconds. We're not interested in that point. What I do want you to do, though, is just mark down how many words they got through in 1 minute. Okay? And again, reading rate has to do not necessarily with fluency, because that has to do a little more with comprehension. Reading rate is just how many words they can read in 1 minute. So you just simply count them up. It's no big deal.
So are you talking about fluency or reading rate right now?
I'm talking about fluency, but we're measuring it just by reading rate. So if you're technically measuring fluency, I know they're listed together, but usually when you see the word fluency, there's a little more comprehension involved. You're not interested in comprehension on this part. So it's just the rate part of fluency. There's several parts of fluency. What I'm wanting you to focus in then is reading rate. Okay. On 328, there's a chart. Let me look at it. Oh, hello. That's the chart I was looking for. I couldn't find it. So you will be able to find out what's average for that grade level. So on this chart it says at 4th grade they should be reading 155 words per minute. This student read, 133, I think. So we know from that chart they're slightly below what a normal 3rd grader or 5th grader would be reading at. Okay, it just gives you more information. Not a whole lot of information, but a little bit more. Okay. That
student pronounced all of those words right except for...
Yeah. That student pronounced, we can assume, they pronounced all the words right except for that word slimy. Mm-hmm. And slimmy is what she looks like. Note it. Go ahead and mark it down. And they still, for reading rate, they're still going to get credit. It's kind of weird for at least attempting the word. And so because you're dealing with the 1 minute, you don't want them to really stop and spend a lot of time on each word. But it's good information to know, and it's interesting there. It's a median vowel sound, and it'd be interesting to see if that's what she messed up on the other assessments too, on the spelling and others. So, yeah, if they miss it, write it to the side.
It's probably good for us to make that double space.
Yes, double space would be good, and maybe even make yourself a copy if you're using something from the book. All right. Where it says reading rate and comprehension, graphing words per minute and comprehension, I don't like that assessment, so I am fixing a new one for you. You can make a note on that. It's the 3rd one from the bottom on the chart, assessment chart for case study, where it says reading rate and comprehension. I'll have to get back with you hopefully next Friday on that one. And then the last one I have for you is vocabulary. That's actually a misprint. It's supposed to be Cockrum and Schenker, page 60 to 62. If you have your book, I'll try to fix that before we get it up. Okay. This is vocabulary. Quick check for basic sight word knowledge is in Cockrum and Schenker. here is an example of what it looks like. Excuse me. And you're going to give them the word list. You may want a copy also, though, to have so you can look at it. Let's see if it's the next one. There's a writing sample. That's for Jennings IRI. I think we may have already passed it. Yeah, that's going to be a lot to scan in, but that's okay. Okay.
Yeah. Will you give us the setup of everything we need to have in here in the case study?
Yes. Yes. It's actually, you already have it. The question is the setup for the case study. You have, let's see if I can find it here. In your syllabus, there's a list of all the things that need to be included, and then those are the section headings. Then when it says assessments, there you go. This is your chart, and this is your table of contents for your assessments. So I prefer them to be in the order that's on this chart. These were a little bit out of order. Yes, through the Jennings, just do the pages you use. I don't want the whole thing. Anything you wrote on, I want to see. Yeah. All right, so you have this chart. You don't yet have this chart, which says results for assessments, or do you?
It's on the next page.
Oh, yay, I'm so efficient. So the next page has the results for assessment. So I'm so prepared. I amaze myself. Okay. Now, I mentioned this in passing, and please help me remember to tell Michelle, but I mentioned this in passing. When you get all of your assessments done, I want to sit down with you and talk about your assessments. So you have to have this chart filled out before we can talk, okay? And the reason for our talk, it's called a data meeting, but I want you to be comfortable with expressing the information you found, but I also want to offer help with what you might want to work on them with, okay? So I call it low-hanging fruit, because there's some skills that I think are so easy to find and help that if they're messing up on them, I can find the low-hanging fruit for you, and you can work on it and see some results, which is always fun. Okay, so you see here, this is not rocket science. You know, she wrote words like did well, you know, comprehension, 5th grade instructional. Student results listed in that third column, the deficits noted interest listed on the right hand column. She did actually go back later after our data meeting and add a lot more to that right hand column. So you don't necessarily need to have the deficits noted. Just unless something just jumps right out, go ahead and mark it down. Otherwise, we're going to talk about it during the data meeting, and hopefully I'll give you some insight on that. So some diagnostic notes. Diagnosis means you're finding the problem, that you're diagnosing the problem. And so you're going to have some ideas here, I bet. Like she said, very good word color, but her comprehension is lacking. She wanted to go back to stories and find information. Her spelling is not very strong. And in her writing, she does not have really complete thoughts well. Based on other test results the teacher gave me, she's definitely not on grade level in general. Okay? That's perfectly fine for diagnostic notes. It's not something I probably would share with parents in that way, but for you and I, for learning the process, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Okay? Qualitative analysis notes. Okay, so here on diagnostic notes, we're trying to find some general indications of problems. Qualitative analysis notes could also be quantitative, but you could start talking about the results that you found on those tests. You know, on Jennings, she scored at 5th grade instructional, but on the phonemic awareness, she was very, very low. You know, so that's qualitative means use the words to describe the numbers. And then before you come to the meeting, I would love for you to figure this out, initial remediation ideas. I'll remind you of this before our meetings, but think about what you think, just off the top of your head, that she might need to work on, she or he. Okay. Answering comprehension questions and so on, and I think the rest of that, yeah. All right. So your case study, and Michelle did have a good question about what is all involved in the case study. Let's take a peek at your syllabus, just calm my fears down a little bit, make sure it's in there. You see the block, I believe it's on, oh golly, no page numbers, sorry. It starts about the 10th page or so, and it looks like this. Live text. Says live text key assignments. Yeah, it's right before the chart, or it's a little bit before the chart. Let me pull it up here. After the chapter readings? Okay. This is a huge syllabus.
First requirement.
There we go. Yeah, so it says live text key assignment, reading diagnosis, remediation case study. Again, this is due by week 12, so don't let that catch you. Not by 15 or 16, by week 12. It's coming up soon. Okay? Here's the format. Okay? These are going to be headings in your case study. Now, we've talked about this in general, but we'll just get a little more specific as the semester goes on. Student information, that should be pretty easy.
We don't use their name, right?
Correct. Never use their name. Make up a pseudonym. Try to keep the same gender and maybe the same culture. That kind of helps out sometimes. Okay? The descriptions, again, we start with the Jennings, and then we do the other 9. That should be the correction. Yeah, there's 10 total. Oh, should be 10. 10 total. So you do Jennings and the other 9. Okay.
Sorry. Is this by lesson 7 though? Is that like only a couple?
Yeah, lesson 7 is our goal. I know some of you haven't started yet, so that's going to be quite difficult. I'm expecting it to take you about 3 weeks to be able to do all this, so we'll play it by ear.
As we go in.
If you've been going in, yeah, if you can go in other days and get it caught up. Lesson 7 is a good goal because it's due by 12, so I don't want to change that date. Okay, so first you're going to describe and copy those 10 reading assessments, and that's exactly what we looked at on the example today with Tiffany's work. So please put the assessments in the order that you see the assessment chart. This chart should be first, then the results chart should be second, and then your scanned in copies of everything. And again, we'll be happy to help you scan in things. You can also take pictures, don't forget, and import them as a PDF or GIF or whatever. Yeah, that'll instead of scanning. That'll help. Yeah, Jennings is going to be, yeah, that'll be a long time. Okay, then after this, you're going to include your 5 lesson plans. Now, the data meeting is going to occur in between lesson 7, after you've gotten all of your assessments done, and before you do your lesson plans. Then you're going to do the 5 BCF lesson plans, 5 lessons at least. And then at the end, I'm sorry? We're going to work, yeah, supposedly do lesson 8. If you have not been able to get into your classroom, they won't be able to be due. So yeah, as close as we can to these dates. You know me, I'll work with you, but I just want us to know that this time is ticking. Then descriptions of your successes, areas of continued need. I do want you to have concepts and terms from our book, concepts and terms from our PowerPoints. Don't just think this is kind of like you and I sitting down having tea. I mean, this is needs to be pretty professional. A reflection, the 3R you're probably used to, but a review of what you did, the relevance, and then this word responsibility should be along with the other. Okay, there we go. About a page for each R. Okay, so at the end of this box, it shows you exactly what you need. You've got the assessments. Oh, this is frustrating because these are not 10. Is this fixed on the sample that I gave you, the syllabus that I gave you? It's not fixed, okay. Lesson plans are still the same. Everything is actually still the same, it's just the assessment number. And I want you to know that this is the points that each one is worth.
Did you say?
What?
I know someone asked a question about the reflections earlier. Are we supposed to reflect?
Okay, good question. Reflections, no. You don't reflect after every time you go. Let me go to the end. What you are doing, though, is filling out this log. Every lesson plan needs a reflection, and the case study needs a reflection. But you are, there's the case study thing, there's your field experience thing. Here's your tutoring log, sign in.
But that is every time.
And that, yes, this one is every time for sure. You do not need to reflect every time. However, if you'll get in the habit, it'll really help you with finishing your case study. But at least just what you did that day, you know, we read a book, we did this, yeah, the activity, yeah. But again, the only thing that needs to be turned in is this log, not like a diary each time. That's kind of evolved. So if you talk to someone that took the class last fall, it was different. Spring is when we changed this. It's a lot of reflecting, yeah, a lot of things. Okay, our time is way over. Thank you so much for staying. If you have other questions, don't hesitate to stay. We'll talk about it. I'm going to go ahead and shut down the recording if I can.